The WTO agreements are lengthy and complex because they deal with a wide range of legal texts for different activities. They deal with agriculture, electronics, intellectual property, industrial standards, and much more. But a number of simple fundamental principles run through these documents. And one of these principles is encouraging development and economic reform. The WTO system contributes to development. On the other hand, developing countries need flexibility in the time they take to implement the system's agreements. And the agreements themselves inherit the earlier provisions of GATT that allow for special assistance and trade concessions for developing countries. Over 3/4 of the WTO members are developing countries and countries on the way to develop market economies. During the 7.5 years of the Uruguay round, over 60 of these countries implemented trade liberalization programs autonomously. At the same time, developing countries and transition economies were much more influential in these Uruguay rounds, far more than they've been in earlier rounds. And they are even more now in the current Doha development agenda. At the end of the Uruguay rounds, developing countries were prepared to take on most of the obligations that are required of developing countries. But the agreements, of course, did give them a transition period to adjust to these many probably unfamiliar and perhaps difficult WTO provisions, particularly so for the poorest, least developed countries. A ministerial decision at the end of the round says better off countries should accelerate implementing market access commitments on goods exported by the least developed countries, and it seeks increased technical assistance for them. More recently, developed countries started to allow duty-free access and quota-free imports for almost all products of the least developed countries. On all of this, the WTO and its members are still going through a learning process. The current Doha development agenda includes developing countries' concerns about the difficulties they face by implementing the Uruguay round agreements. And if you now want to know more about politics, especially European politics from a German point of view, I put my next video in the end screen. Click and enjoy. I'll see you there. Viel Spaß!